Troubleshooting problems in a Linux system. There isn't a system administrator out there who hasn't spent some time troubleshooting unforeseen problems. It takes a detective's mindset to narrow down the possible causes, deduce explanations, and then develop steps to remedy the problem. In such a process, there's no substitute for experience. And in this nugget, I'm going to try and give you as much practical troubleshooting experience as I can. So let's get started. There's different types of problems that you can run into in a Linux system. I've listed some here, and let's talk about each of these briefly, and then we'll talk about them in more detail when we go out to the Linux screen, and I'll show you examples of some of these and how to fix them. Okay, the first type of problem I have here is hardware problem. Now this is some physical problem in your system, like some wire's broken, or it's unplugged, or you dropped your zip disk the other day and now it doesn't work anymore. Okay, and the way that you fix hardware problems is you fix that thing that's physically broken, or you plug the wire in, or whatever's wrong. And that zip disk that you dropped, maybe you're gonna have to buy a new zip disk to fix that problem. And then there's operating system problems or kernel problems. And these are not very common in the stable kernel releases. Remember that kernels are denoted by three numbers, and we'll call it x.y.z. Okay? That middle number, if that's an even number, like 0 or 2 or 4, okay, those numbers represent stable releases, and they've been really well tested. And it's rare that in those releases that you're going to run into kernel problems. Okay? If you've got some odd numbered kernel, some unstable kernel, why do you have that? Well, maybe you've got that because it was the only release that had a driver for this new piece of hardware that you got. Okay, so great, you can run that new piece of hardware, but you might get some the drawbacks to that, or you might get some issues with the kernel bugs. All right, so we'll talk about these briefly and sort of show you how to fix one if you ran into some kernel bug. You can download patches and recompile your kernel and stuff like that. We won't go into great detail about these. My suggestion is stick to the even, stable releases if you're an inexperienced user. And then there's application software problems. These types of problems, they're very close to the user's experience, so the user might report these fairly often. They could range from, some system setting has changed so the software isn't working, or, some flag in the software is broken, or it's not set incorrectly so the software seems broken. There's configuration problems. These could be system-wide configuration problems or user-specific configuration problems. And you would change the configuration files in Etsy for the system-wide ones, and you change the dot files in the user's home directory for the user-specific configuration files. And then there's user problems, meaning some user account problem, like the user can't log in, or the user logs in but can't go into some directory that they think they should be able to go into. And these three types of problems here, software, configuration, and user problems, are very tightly related. Some configuration setting that you made could make software not work anymore. It could give some users might have different experiences than they had before, and so you have to make sure when you're troubleshooting these that you're thinking about all three at once and how one change in one setting is affecting other programs and other experiences in the system. Now, no matter what type of problem you have here, I formulated a plan of attack for you to take to try and solve it. So the first thing that you should do is observe the problem firsthand. This is really important, especially when people come to you and report this problem. Don't just take it, oh, that's a broken, and then you try and start fixing things. Observe that problem firsthand. Get them to recreate that problem for you. Or if you observe the problem yourself, recreate the problem yourself. Make sure that you can have this problem be reproducible. So if you can recreate this problem over and over and over again, then you're going to be a long way towards formulating a guess as to the cause of the problem. All right? And I'm going to try and give you some tools here to help you formulate guesses as to what the cause of the problem is. And then attempt to fix the problem, and keep good records here. So when you attempt to fix the problem, my next step says go back to step 1 until it's fixed. So you attempt to fix it, and you go to recreate it again, you go to reproduce it, and it's still there. All right? Well, maybe what you fixed is essential to having it solved, but maybe there's something else along the way. Or maybe what you did was superfluous, and it's going to mess something else up. All right? So you have to be really careful here, keep good records, and then when you're all done, you're going to be sure that the changes you made fixed the problem that you wanted solved, and it didn't affect anything else in the system. All right? So this is like a little circular diagram here. We're going to observe, formulate a guess, fix it, and go back and see if we can reproduce it again, and so on. I've listed out here some preventative measures that you should take just so that you have to troubleshoot less often. First, buy supported hardware. Stay away from the brand new hardware with the experimental device drivers, that kind of stuff. If you stick to the supported hardware, you're just going to have less problems because people out there have tested this extensively, lots of people are using the hardware, and you're just much less likely to run into problems with that. For the same sort of reason, stay away from untested software or beta versions of software. Okay, like it says, untested software. It hasn't been tested by the community. It hasn't really been, all the kinks haven't been worked out yet. So just stay away from that. If you absolutely positively have to have this piece of untested software or this brand new hardware, then go ahead and use it. Use the experimental device drivers or whatever you need to get it working. But be aware that if some problem creeps up that you can't really track down the source of, it might be in this unsupported hardware or this beta software, and you should uninstall this stuff and try it out again, try your system out again, and see if the problem persists. And the chances are that the unsupported hardware, the untested software, is causing those problems that you can't track down the source of. And lastly here I wrote, don't overclock your processor. Maybe you don't know what this means. Let me explain. When you buy your processor from Pentium or AMD or whoever you bought your processor from, that processor has an advertised speed, like 500 megahertz. There's switches typically or jumpers on motherboards so that you can run that processor to faster speed. Okay, it's a faster clock rate is what it's called. And that clock rate that's been advertised by Pentium, the reason they advertised it or sold you that as a 500 megahertz chip is not because they're trying to scam you and it's really a 666 megahertz chip. It's really because they've determined that that's the right speed for that processor so that it can run for long periods of time. All right? When you run that processor at a faster speed, more heat is generated in the processor. The processor might not be able to dissipate that heat quickly enough, and then things are going to start to fail and break down. Okay? So don't overclock your processor because that's just, it's just a problem waiting to happen when you do that. One of the first things you want to do when you discover a problem in your system or somebody reports a problem to you is you want to narrow down the possible causes of that problem. And one of your biggest allies in narrowing down the causes to some problem are the system log files. And so if you go to the var log directory and do an ls there, you'll see a whole bunch of log files in here. Now, each of these files basically holds information on some different aspect of the system. Okay, like the boot log file holds information like boot messages. The mail log file holds information about the mail utility, and so on. Okay? Now, to keep track of what each of these files holds, you can go to the etc directory and look at the syslog.conf file. Syslog.conf will hold and tell you which of these log files holds which types of error messages. All right, so let's look at this file. Basically, this file has two columns. Okay, the left column says, what type of facility or what's the service that is generating the error message, and then what log file should that error message go to. All right, so let's look at this one. Mail.star goes to var log mail log. What does mail.star mean? Well, the left-hand side here is really two pieces. The first part is the facility, and the second part is the level or the priority of the message. How important or how severe of an error message happened, and then this is saying any type of mail error message that happens should go to var log mail log. Okay? Now you could, if you wanted to, distinguish these and say put like unimportant mail messages into one place and put very critical important ones somewhere else. All right, you could do that, and let me just show you how you would do that if we quit out of here and look at the man page on syslog.conf. In that man page, here's the listings of the priorities. Okay, so the priority, meaning like the importance of the message, is classified by these keywords. There's debug, there's info, there's notice, there's warning. These are kind of like the low level, not very important messages, kind of like low on the totem pole in terms of importance. And then there's like critical, alert, emergency. These are absolutely important messages, and these things should, be fixed immediately. Whereas these things can kind of linger on. These messages are telling you something, but the critical operation of the system is not in jeopardy. Whereas with like emergency messages, you should be fixing these things immediately. All right. Now, so you can use those keywords to like funnel your messages off to different files. So if we quit again, like I said, you could have like mail.debug here go somewhere, and then mail.emergency go somewhere else. You want to make sure that you you use all the different classifications. You don't want like mail.info notices to slip through the cracks. So make sure that all the different levels of messages are going somewhere. Okay. Now. Up here, you can see there's a designation for the var log messages file. There's a classification over here that says star.info. So any type of info message is going to var log messages. And this is also saying that no mail messages should go there, no auth priv messages.